Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Telling It Like It Is. My name is Jade Alberts, the founder of Pure Guidance, and this is a live show. If you have any questions, please put them out there. If you have any questions after the fact, put them in the chat, and Chris and Wilson and I will ask them. But I was talking with Chris and Wilson beforehand, saying this is the first time I never sent them any questions to kind of review. We know each other, like we're very close. Some examples of that is we were at Up 22 and Wilson put a $20 bounty on my head for someone to take me out. I mean, it didn't happen. Thank God that guy has really good standards. And then they didn't stop me from humping a leg once, but that's a whole different story. And I mean, I'm just happy they didn't get it on video, but in all seriousness, I'm excited to have this conversation. We're running an Ag Tech Summit at Startup TNT. Tallgrass is a sponsor of it. We're also doing a clean tech and life science. You can go to the comment section and, click on the link. It'll go there. And obviously for more information about Tallgrass, but you know what, Chris, Wilson, Happy New Year. And I'm excited to have this conversation.
Happy to hear you as well, Jake.
Yeah. So does that set the tone about, kind of the level of seriousness?
Yeah, I think so. To be clear, I think I ended up getting up to about $60 before I'd get somebody to start taking the bet serious to catch you while you're trying to order a beer at the bar. But
yeah, I think I must have been out of the room because I would have done it for 10.
You probably would have done it for free.
Yeah,
I'm guessing. Oh, in all seriousness, I mean, it's, again, we've all been buddies and we've had a lot of meetings, and Chris, we've done, worked with Startup TNT together, and we've had quite a few conversations about Tallgrass, and I love it. I mean, Wilson, why don't you guys maybe explain a little bit of your background on each of you and how you came together and why you founded Tallgrass?
Yeah, sure. So, my background, kind of a little bit of a journey, to a degree, a bit of a kind of backward all beginning. Chris reminded me yesterday in a different meeting that I've had like 15 different careers, it seems like now. So, I started as a farmer in southern Saskatchewan, around the Moose Jaw area, 5th generation, scratching around there. Went off and did an agriculture degree. And was doing that and building some businesses on the side of the farm. I built a construction company out in Calgary back when anyone with a hammer could build a construction company. And series of kind of left turns and events, ended up in corporate finance and mergers and acquisitions. And I was a partner with one of the big law firms here in Canada for a few years. I did that for about a decade. Before shifting gears and starting to build tech companies. And that's what, really started to bring me back to ag, which is always where my passion was. And, built some software companies and some other ones and not exclusively in ag, but quite a bit. And it was through that journey that Chris and I crossed paths. And, Tallgrass really came out of what we saw as a need in the ecosystem. And maybe another way of looking at it is, really what companies and we thought institutional type investors wanted. Capital is good for these companies, but we really think they meaningfully just wanted help. People who kind of knew what was going on. I joke, I call it scar tissue. And so, we're a team that we put together that knows ag and food, for our whole careers very deeply. And that's our role is we come in and want to help these companies really build a great business and oh, by the way, we'll invest as well.
No, I love it. How about Chris? How about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I came out of a place near to where Wilson came from, which is, I think, kind of maybe part of the reason we got along, both from the southeast Saskatchewan area. But I spent a good part.
Rectangle.
What's that?
The Lord's Rectangle, Saskatchewan,
yeah.
Right?
Exactly, right? Yeah.
Good. It's a natural feature. Yeah. So I came out of Estevan, but I'd say I'd probably fight out of Drayton Valley. It's probably where I'm billed from. That's where I did my formative years. And then after that, I got my professional career was in the engineering world in oil and gas here in Calgary for years. And then I moved overseas for a better part of a decade. Learned a few things, got a few different perspectives. Lived in France, so I got to learn how to work with French people. So that was another tool in my belt. And yeah, took my MBA when I was over there in Europe, came back to Canada, and left the whole oil and gas industry. By that point, I was up in sort of the management world. Had a big interest in this impact investing movement that had started a few years ago. I think it was always there. It was never really branded as impact. And I followed that stream over towards ag tech as well. Built kind of a small family office and did a lot of angel investing here in Calgary. Then yeah, me and Wilson kind of started working together a little bit. And both from different angles really saw this agriculture thing coming down the line. I think it was always there. It's just not been maybe marketed the way other big industries are marketed in Western Canada. But we both know just from where we're from, kind of what it's capable of. And yeah, we're like, let's do this. No one's doing it the way we want to do it. Let's keep it real and let's get out there and see if we can make a difference.
No, for sure. I mean, instead of going to France, you just could have went to Gravelberg. But I mean, that's to learn. If you wanted to learn French. But hey, who's saying? I mean, I'm just going to get the plug in here for your, Go Riders. So just so we all know. But in all seriousness, I mean, I agree with you. I want to dive into that statement that you made about ag tech, right? We talk about clean tech here. We talk about life science. We talk about health tech, whatever it is. Ag tech always seems, even though we're in the heart of pretty much the ag tech world, why do you think it doesn't get any love, or why do you think it's not talked about or promoted as much as the other industries?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One is it is so big and it's close to us and it's kind of around us, and we know people from the farm, or we're from the farm and we left there. So there's an element of like, it's actually so well known to us that we kind of forget about it. It's hidden in plain sight. And then there's an element of, it's traditionally been thought of as kind of this sleepy little business that plugs along. And when people talk agriculture, they always think the farm. And we're careful that, when we talk about Tallgrass, you won't hear us talk about farming tech or farming. We talk about agriculture and food. Because our view is, agriculture is really from your fork all the way back to the farm and then upstream the farm. And if you look at it through that lens, it is massive. The impact on the economy, the impact on the world. Like you look at, the number of wars, including recently, and not even talking about kind of Ukraine, Russia, but like Arab Spring, all that was all driven by food. And so it is tied closely to everything we think about when we think about climate and sustainability and reduction of greenhouse gases. You can't have those conversations without talking about ag. You want to talk about the hydrogen economy and using hydrogen as a fuel. You can't do that without talking about ag, because you got to talk about ammonia. And ammonia, guess what? It's fertilizer. Like the whole thing, like it's all interrelated. So there's an element of the complexity that people don't understand, like how big this is, how impactful it is in our world. And then in Canada, we're lucky. We're one of the most, we're one of the top producing countries in the world. We feed the world. We always have. And we also have the privilege of producing the inputs that the other parts of the world that need in order to make that food. Brazil is a huge producer of soybeans and cotton and different things, but they can't produce their own fertilizer. Canada can. The EU, they can't produce their own fertilizer. Canada can. And so it's an interesting spot we play.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of an inherent modesty around in our culture too, around things like this. When you're good at breakaway goals, you're not supposed to cheer too much, right? Steve Yzerman was the big guy. It's like, no, never smile after you score a goal. So I learned a little bit overseas about how big Canada agriculture was that I'd never really heard here because of the modesty. So, one thing that always comes up that's an interesting fact is how I learned in France that 80% of their Dijon mustard is grown in Saskatchewan, for example. So this isn't known, right? It's not actually Like you go there, maybe they disagree with me, but point me a mustard field in France, and now I'll buy you dinner. So, yeah. So that we're very big. We're very successful, very innovative historically, and yeah, we see that, and so we're here to help put it on the map a little better as we go along.
Again, I'm talking with Chris Edwards and Wilson Acton, the founders of Tallgrass Ventures. Click on the website in the comments section, and I'm actually going to take you up on that. I'm going to Google Earth, so if when we go to Boogie's next, that you're buying, right? And if you're buying, I'm going to have probably about 20 of the KD deep fried bites.
I like this. I like this challenge. That's where I went too. I was like, I got to find a mustard field in France.
Yes, exactly.
Anytime Chris Edwards is picking up the tab, like we're making this count.
The good thing we have this on video, Will. Now he has to pay up.
Yeah. There's a burger there over at Boogie's. Don't Fear the Reaper burger. So I'm happy to pay for that one if you guys can.
Perfect.
Well, let's see the comments get lit up here with the people watching this video, whether it's real time or after the fact. Pin dropping mustard fields in France.
Yes, exactly. That'll be the first time that we've ever done that. Pin drop something. But you both bring up a very valid point there, and I think that goes in general is like, why aren't we doing a better job? Not only like as a fund for you guys, but as a province, as a city, as a ag community, promoting what we have here.
I think there's a huge element, like Chris mentioned, like we're so Canadian about all sorts of stuff, right? We see like same conversations about energy, right? The biggest producers of renewable energy in the world, and I don't know if it's still true, but 5 years ago, they were headquartered in Calgary. We didn't talk about that. Calgary was this big, dirty oil, bad city. Well, agriculture is the same way. We don't talk about it. We don't toot our own horn. Like canola, everyone, Chris has heard me say this a ton of times. Canola is the world's healthiest human consumption oil. Canola stands for Canada's oil. It was invented in a collaboration between the University of Saskatchewan and the University of Manitoba. We've been leading the world for generations on the production of food, healthy, sustainable. There's a whole conversation going on now about regenerative ag and what does that mean? And you get people, coming in to, kind of weigh in on it, and celebrities and different stuff. And it's a funny conversation because if you go to Yorkton, Saskatchewan, and you talk about regenerative ag, you go, what are you talking about? And then you say, well, no, they talk about like reducing your tillage and, not kind of turning the land and reducing your fertilizer and doing all of these kind of practices to make your soils better. And they'll go, yeah, we've been doing that since the 80s. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. It's like, we just don't talk about it because we're so Canadian.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's we talk. I mean, that's a conversation we've had since for 8 or 9 years, and that's one of the reasons why I started telling it like it is. We're not shouting from the mountaintops enough, right? Yeah. I think some bigger organizations with bigger followings and bigger clout, have to be doing a better job, and we won't mention them here because we like them still, but we got to get. We don't have to boast and brag, but we do have to get a little better.
I think raising the profile, right, and raising the opportunity that there is in ag, like there is some, let's step back from it for a minute. Like, let's say you want to get into, the growing technology sector in Alberta, or you want, AI and machine learning, data science, all these kind of areas. Well, there's some pretty cool problems that either need to be solved or are in the process of being solved in agriculture that you can apply to and apply those skill sets to, and people just don't kind of think of it, right? Like all this Beyond Meat, all that stuff, like these are technical processes. We're everyone's excited about Tesla and autonomous cars. Well, we've had, self-driving, GPS assisted steering tractors now for over 20 years in ag. We're going to see full autonomy in ag way before you see it on the street.
No, I mean, I actually never even thought about that. My uncle and my first cousin still found, now that you name dropped Yorkton, between Yorkton and Malbo and Willowbrook, right? So, and it's just, they get in there and he's just basically probably watching TikTok as he's sitting in the cab, right?
Yeah.
It's changed from the old days when I actually had to drive the lunch out to my grandpa would never let me drive the tractor because, well, that was a very good, probably decision.
Yeah.
There would have been
Yeah.
a lot of fixing up that would have had to been done.
And again, that's just like one little sliver. Like we saw a company come through the other day, I think, and they were like trying to derive not human collagen, but collagen from tobacco. And like the view was that they could kind of, through this journey, they could actually make like anti-cancer drugs out of tobacco. Well, isn't that a turn of events, right? Like you can smoke your way to cancer free. Like I was just going to do it to lose weight. But again, that's like science in agriculture being applied to like tackle some pretty cool problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the one thing I do see a lot of is, as you mentioned earlier, Wilson, about going back, the U of S collaborates with the U of M, which collaborates with Olds. I mean, there's a lot of collaboration that goes on in our ecosystem here that is very strong.
Yeah, big time.
Well, let's talk about a little bit, about Tallgrass. And again, for anybody that wants any more information, click on the comment section, go right to their website. As a fund, I mean, everybody has their own, what they're looking for, what your investor thesis is. But for you two, I mean, when you guys are setting up the venture fund, what are you looking for in a company? What kind of company should look to reach out for you and to kind of get that investment from Tallgrass? Chris, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple schools of thought on this, but I'm just going to answer your question about founders reaching out to us. But I mean, this question always comes up with everyone, and it's what do you look for? And there's sort of 2 or 3 different things that come up, and I think it's a little bit of all of them. So I mean, there's the founders, there's the market conditions that you're operating in, and then what your actual product is that you're selling, right? So we look at them all equal importance, right? And on the founder side, it evolves a little bit from where I thought it would go when I started in this a few years ago, and it's kind of like working anywhere. We are going into this as trying to be an extension of their team, and as such, we treat it as people we want to work with, right? So it's not completely about what they can do. It's also about what kind of people they are and how they do their business. And do we get along, right? It's just you can do a lot better things when you get along with someone. So that's part of it at the beginning. You get into the product side of things, and there's schools of thought that you need really significant IP on some of this stuff. But then there's the trade secret side. So we look at both things, right? And we try to keep open minds as we work through this and not come to a conclusion until we've seen everything. And yeah, there's ones we've looked at. It's like, yeah, this isn't protected the same way as you might expect after dealing in it. And this is what my confidence level is. So I guess if someone's approaching us, you don't necessarily need to have these things in place. You just need to tell us how you're going to compete and how you're going to keep your market share along the way. Doesn't have to be, no, we have this patent, we have this. Just tell us how you're going to do it, and we'll work with you on it. And then the market side of things is, it's important. It's not just the TAM, I guess we're calling. So a lot of people are instructed on their slide decks to throw the TAM on it. Those numbers can be come up with fairly quick, and they're usually quite overinflated. What I'm more interested in is kind of the staged market. Like in the first year, what kind of market are you going after? And then as you expand your products or add new lines, then what markets are you going after? And it's more, how's this market going to evolve in time? And you won't have all the answers long term, but in the short term, maybe you can really dig into I use this thing called the horizon approach. It's not super complicated, but it's your base business. What are you going after? The stuff that you're going to develop in a year, what are you going after? And how is this going to expand? And we can get an idea then how the market's going to grow over time versus what you think it is now. So, I mean, when people come talk to us, it's not just about slide decks. We just want to know what you're thinking, where you are, and really how you're going to go through this journey. Wilson, what do you have in there?
I was gonna say a lot of it, like I agree with everything you said. A lot of it is also understanding how are you thinking about the problem? The answer is arguably less important as opposed to the process, and I think that's what Chris is saying, right? Like if you talk about kind of horizons, well, I'm targeting this market, and then I'm going to target this market, and then I'm going to naturally follow this. Well, does that kind of logically make sense? Can we kind of follow it through? What kind of assumptions have you made? How are you going to back that up? Because we're investing in early stage companies. We're investing in pre-Series A, and we're investing in the companies that we think we can work with the founders to make the biggest difference. And so part of that is, how are founders thinking about it? How are you attacking this? Are you going to take over the world with, this mousetrap, this piece of hardware? Maybe it's not even I think some people get lost in it. Like, oh, we only do software. And it's like, well, but is hardware just like the gateway to actually get to a full software thing? Like how are you thinking about it? How do you relate with your customer? And that's really important to us.
Yeah, because I think one of the complications is remembering what we're investing in and where we want it to go. So if you're investing in a startup, it usually does one thing, or they're focusing on one thing at the beginning. But we're investing in companies that we hope can get big, get 10x and above off these things. And for a company to get that large, you usually have to do more than one thing, right? And so that those other things aren't developed yet. So it's this, so that you can only measure what they're doing now, just in a certain way. And then beyond that, it's using all these intangibles to see, what other things can they do along the way, and do they have the mental makeup to do that and execute.
It's a way to look at focus, execution, discipline. Like those are all things about maturity. It's my friends over at the Growth X Fund. They always say most early stage companies don't die of starvation; they die of overeating. And really, it's a lack of it's a lack of focus, it's a lack of execution. And so, like again, how are you thinking about this? Well, I'm attacking this market because of XYZ, and then I'm going to go to here, and then here.
I love GrowthX, just as a shout out to them and what they're doing and coming in and helping companies in the prairies. I actually we had a couple comments here, but I'm actually Tim Sweet has a question here that I think that I would say go answer, but I'm actually going to have you guys answer it right now. So he says, as an investment mix, are you intentional about the proportion of portfolio companies invested in focusing on the current needs, handling today's challenges versus what, the forward looking, whether it be extreme weather, drought, changing regulations?
Yeah, it's a combination of both in that, maybe a way to look at it is you need to think about kind of how we think about the investments. And this isn't, kind of bespoke to Tallgrass. This is kind of venture capital and fund investing as a whole. But we're building a portfolio of companies that are early stage today, and we're looking to help them grow, kind of nurture them along over the next number of years. And then ultimately resulting in some form of an event that allows us to cash in on the investment that we made. And that doesn't mean that that's the end of the line for the company. It's just a step along the way. And so to do that, though, that means we have to have a view of where we think the world is heading, from 5 to 10 years from now and beyond. Because if we're only solving a problem that's a today problem, and that's going to be eclipsed by something else, some other transformational kind of thing that's coming on out of left field in 2 or 3 years, well, that actually wasn't a great investment for us. So we're always trying to kind of figure out where, in the most Canadian saying ever, where's the puck going? And so, we need to be thinking ahead of that. And a big part of that is being attuned to, what are the pain points, what are the needs today, what are the gaps in the market, but what are the macro trends? Because if you go ask people, like a customer, and you say, well, what's your problem that you're solving today? well, they may not necessarily give you the best answer because they're thinking, the next 24 months. We're trying to think on a 5-10 year plus horizon. We're already thinking kind of 15, 20 years out when we think about where the firm goes as a whole, which is different than this fund.
No, definitely. I get that. And thanks, Tim, for the questions. And Marty makes a comment in on LinkedIn saying that I was going to say most of Italian olive oil is grown in Spain. So I guess it goes back to the kind of canola thing, right? Yeah, they just have a better marketing department apparently in Italy.
Right. There's something we can learn in Canada. We need to be better telling our story.
Yeah, food for thought. There we go, right? So why don't we talk about what's next for you guys? Where is Tallgrass going to go? Maybe talk a little short term, maybe year, maybe long term, 5 to 10 years. Chris, why don't you share your thoughts?
Yeah, I sometimes I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing next week. So 10 years is maybe a little extreme. But I'll start now. I mean, in the short term, we do a lot of firm building activities right now, right? So I mean, maybe this is boring for a venue like this, but there's a lot of boring system developments in firms that happen at the beginning, and it's because at some point we're also money managers, right? So we have to be very responsible in a lot of things and use really proper decision making processes and stuff, so that institutional investors, for example, can understand how we're doing things and see how we're de-risking all our investments. So there's a lot of that firm building stuff that's going on. I think if I was going to look 5 years down the line, maybe we'll get into secondary funds, not secondary, the investment class, but a second fund, I guess I should say. Maybe it goes there. We're trying to focus on what we're doing now and not get too ahead of ourselves. But that's potentially in the future, right? Where that goes, we don't know. Does it expand beyond our pre-Series A type investment into other classes? Does it expand slightly out of our current geographies? Yeah, those are all things to be discussed. World changes rapidly, and then I think we want to grow bigger as a firm as well, on not just the fund, but on how we interact with the ecosystem. So there's a third member of our team, Marlise, who's not here today, but Marlise has developed this really nice platform concept for Tallgrass that's going to really be instrumental in expanding what we can do beyond just investing in startups.
Nice.
I think
we haven't mentioned Marlise. We all three of us could get in some big trouble here if her name didn't get mentioned.
Yeah.
Marlise is what keeps this thing going.
There is no doubt there.
I joke. I'm the gas, Chris is the brake, Marlise is the clutch. Like, she's the one that gets everything work, in makes everything work. But I think one thing that's maybe important is also what we don't expect is going to change, and that is an element of sticking to our knitting, right? Like, we're not trying to be everything to everybody. Ag and food is our zone. That's where we intend to stay. We think that's a huge category that we could spend a long time in. There's kind of no need to all of a sudden become B2B software investors, in kind of whatever, in fintech or stuff. Like, ironically, fintech and ag are intersecting more and more than ever. Software and ag are intersecting more than ever. So, like, sticking to our knitting and as Chris mentioned, like, our kind of our core principles are building great businesses, and the returns will flow from that, and roll up our sleeves. And that is a huge part of why what we call our platform strategy is so important. And that's what Marlise leads for us, is we think that's a key element of how we add that value in a way that is great for the founders. You hear people talk about vulture capital. Like, we're not here to take your business. We're here to help you grow it, because if we can help you grow it, you're going to make more money. You're going to do better. You're going to be happier. And we make a point of making sure our interests are aligned with yours. So we only win if you win.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great a great statement, right? I mean, we're all in it to win. We're all in it to help. We're all in it to, whether that be money or advice or whatever it is, right? It's all needed as a company grows, and then that's what I love about what I mean. As obviously, I know you guys quite well, and even any of the other funds. I mean, they just don't hand a check and go away. They dive in, they help, they give advice, and God, in my opinion, that's probably more important than the money, right?
Often.
Yeah.
Yeah, often it is, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm always sad when these conversations come to an end, but I mean, for 250 episodes, and I've reached over 4 million views, and this is a 250th episode of Telling It Like It Is. So the 100th, the funny thing is the 100th episode was Hubert from Truspic, so another kind of ag. So
Hey.
I mean, that wasn't even just planned; that just popped in my head. So I guess every 50 or big number is going to have to be something associated with ag.
Well, that's how important ag is to everybody's life, whether you realize it or not.
Exactly. So I want to get a piece of advice that I love, sharing with entrepreneurs. And Chris, we'll start with you. But if you had one piece of advice for a startup or an entrepreneur, what would that be?
Oh, one piece.
One piece. Yeah.
I'm gonna say be authentic. I mean, that's a buzzword these days, but I love just talking to founders that just talk to me like a person, and I talk to them like a person, and that's like a huge foundation setting for a relationship. And if you do that, I think you'll make a lot of traction with investors versus just straight selling.
Love it. Wilson?
I've maybe just kind of to tap on that one for a minute too, like the just don't always be selling, like relationship building, whether it's investors, whether it's customers, where there's people that you have no idea, it's a networking thing where it's going to interconnect. Everyone's kind of trying to help. I think it's important. And then in building a business, stay so focused on your customer. What's your customer's problem? Not what you want to build or not what a government grant wants you to build. Focus on your customer and solve their needs, and that, don't lose sight of that. Continue to follow that thread. I think it's really important.
Well, I love it. Great advice, and thank you for sharing that. And again, thank you for coming on and sharing your story and your knowledge with our listeners. And I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to see what you guys are going to be doing with the TNT Ag Tech Summit. So, any more information about the Ag Tech Summit, click on the Startup TNT in the comment section, as well as Tallgrass. If you have any questions or want to learn more about them, just click on it there. And Wilson, Chris, thank you very much for spending half an hour with us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, gentlemen. I hope everybody has a great day, and we will see you next week when we will be talking female investment into female companies with the 51. So